Hey everybody, this is Greg Petix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the Petixonian Institute of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Thrilling Adventure Stories number 1 and number 2, the only issues published of this title. This was published by Atlas Seaboard, the mid-70s comic book publisher that lasted for about a year. And even though the comic company was formed just as a means of vengeance against Marvel Comics, some really good stuff came out of it. And definitely the second issue here is a perfect example of, even though the motives of this company weren't that great, despite that, they put out some amazing stuff. This second issue is one of the better anthologies to come out of the 70s. Maybe it could be. Arguably the best anthology comic to come out of the 70s. Let's look at the first issue here. We got, I like this logo, very like old school pulp logo. And this came out in late 74. We have a nice Ernie Colin cover showing a lot of the things that happened in the issue, a little montage. I like Ernie Colin. He just drew so many different kinds of things. He could draw Richie Rich. He could draw this stuff. He could draw gritty crime drama. We got the contents page. So the first story we have here is Tiger Man and the Flesh Peddlers. Story by John Albano, art by Ernie Colin. Tiger Man was a color comic in the Atlas Comics line. Ernie Colin drew the first 2 issues? Maybe just the first one. So this is actually preceding the color series. This is almost like a little teaser for it. But of course, because it's a black and white magazine, they can talk about way gnarlier stuff than a color comic could. Even though Atlas really pushed the boundaries of what could be shown in a Comics Code approved comic. We see the alter ego of Tiger Man here, Lancaster, what the hell is his name? Lancaster Hill. And he sees a woman fall to her death. He runs over. She's dead, though. He can't help her. And he sees this guy on the phone who seems a little suspicious coming out of the building. And he's got, tiger-enhanced senses and strength. So he can easily hear his phone call. And he realizes this guy's talking to his boss and saying, yep, I went off without a hitch. Nobody knew that it was my window she fell from. So Tiger Man confronts him. And Tiger Man's got like steel claws. He's way more violent than your average superhero, especially back then. This is kind of weird though. He's like roughing this guy up really savagely. But then the guy's like, hey man, I'll talk if you give me some water. So Tiger Man goes in the bathroom and gets him a glass of water. I just can't picture any other superhero doing that instead of just saying, fuck you. And so while he's doing that, it's a trick. He pulls out his knife and attacks Tiger Man. Tiger Man like rips the shit out of his face with his steel claws. But the guy passes out, so he can't get any more information from him. So the police interview him, this lieutenant. And he's playing dumb because he doesn't want to give away his Tiger Man, persona. So now, apparently, we find out from the lieutenant, this is all part of like a flesh peddling ring. These guys, pick up young, naive women at the bus terminal. I guess they're called chicken hawks. And then they kind of coerce them into a life of prostitution. But they use way stronger language here than any color comic would. Like they talk about raping, how these guys rape the women and beat them until they submit. They would never even, I think, mention rape in a color comic. So now we cut away. We see a young girl coming to New York City, and she falls prey to these chicken hawks. And here we see this guy about to rape her. I just gotta say, I like Ernie Colin's art a lot, but this is the worst drawn bus I've ever seen. It looks like a shoebox with wheels. I guess maybe he was a rush job. He didn't have time to look at a bus. So Tiger Man breaks in while he's attempting to rape this young girl. And man, he mauls the shit out of him. This is pretty savage stuff. Remember, this is years before Wolverine, when that became like a thing. Like, yeah, superheroes were like violent and really brutal. So Atlas was onto something, even though they didn't last. So this guy's terrified. The guy was in the flesh peddling ring, and he spills the beans. Says there's going to be a meeting. He tells them where Mr. Big is, the big boss. So Tiger Man invades his compound, and his henchmen show up, and he beats the shit out of him. He's a one-man army corps here. There's some nice action. Kind of weird, though. Usually in these comics, when there's guard dogs, it's always like they spare them, because, you know, nobody likes to see dogs get hurt. But here we see, like, this guy accidentally shoots the dog trying to shoot Tiger Man. This dog's already down. I don't know if he's dead or not. Another nice action panel. Kind of ballet-like. He's just a really good fighter. And then he fucking kills the dogs. I know they're guard dogs. They were attacking him, but, you know, they always get around that in comics. So Mr. Big is looking at him through his binoculars, and he's got these mines. His yard is like a minefield. He's trying to blow him up, but Tiger Man's too fast because he has the proportionate strength and speed of a tiger. And Mr. Big here, you know, he's like a total comic book villain, like almost like a James Bond villain. He's got a piranha pool, a pool of piranhas in his house to intimidate his flunkies. And while he's trying to shoot at Tiger Man, he slips and falls right into the piranha pool. And see, they would never show this in a 4-color comic. The piranhas are tearing his flesh off his face. And then we see the little appearance. Tiger Man's going to be coming out soon. Tiger Man #1. So there's our introduction to Tiger Man. When I was a kid, I got these Tiger Man comics. I didn't get this till years later, the Sterling Adventure Stories, but man, I love Tiger Man. There's no superhero like him. He just looks so fucking savage, and he was. So much more violent than your average superhero. Here we have a nice story by, another story by John Albano, and this art is by Leo Summers. And we see this plane crashing over an island, a remote island in the middle of the ocean. There's like 6 survivors. One of these survivors, we soon find out that he's like, I don't know, some mercenary or soldier. He's totally just like ready for action. Everyone else is just, you know, a civilian. They're just like, oh, what do we do? And this one rich lady says, I'm injured. I sprained my ankle. And this guy's basically just saying, just leave her. She'll slow us down. But this one guy, he's nice. He says, I'll carry you on my back. And then they get attacked from these natives on the island. They show up. And luckily the main protagonist has a gun, and he fights them off. He gives the guy some knives that he pilfered from the airplane's kitchen area. And they fight him off temporarily. Some of these panels are really nice. We talked about Leo Summers on the Wolf the Barbarian episode, and this guy could really illustrate, but every now and then a panel would be a little off, like a face would look weird. But for the most part, this guy's got some chops. So they're making their way. The black guy is carrying this rich woman on his back. And while the guy was out getting some fruit, the protagonist, he was foraging for some food, he hears the gunshots from the camp. He left a gun with them. And they took one of the guys. They're cannibals. And we see this horrifying panel of his feet. They're roasting him over a fire. They've got strips of his chest peeled off. So they're just like, oh my God, that poor guy. So then the protagonist is keeping watch that night. And they try to attack him. And he's just too kick-ass for him. You know, they try to sneak up on him, but he's onto him. He's wise. But while he's doing that, they took the young black kid. And she's basically saying, let's just get out of here. They're going to come back. This guy says, take it easy, you old bitch. So this is obviously not a comic code approved comic. And it turns out that she was faking her sprained ankle just because she's old and she wanted to preserve her strength. So, this woman's just a total piece of shit. And so he says, I'm going to go and find that guy. For some reason, the other guy he didn't go rescue, but I guess he's formed a bond with this young kid. And this woman says, he says, I'm going to go off and rescue him. She says, but that's stupid. He's black, the same color as those savages. And he says, right, black like the color of your heart, whore. You never saw dialogue like this in a Marvel or DC comic. So he hasn't been killed yet, the young guy, the young black guy. And he comes on the scene and he's going to rescue him. And it has this really I love this ending where you don't even see what happens. It's just this weird nebulous ending. And the writer says, though they would both die, death for that black youth loses its sting. Because at least, he goes out fighting. Interesting story. Here we have the first chapter of Cro-Mag the Killer. This is just like a caveman comic. All about this cool caveman Cro-Mag. It's kind of like this fantasy of being a caveman. Because, most cavemen were probably stinky and ugly and hairy. But he's this good-looking blonde caveman. Doesn't even have hair on his chest. And he's got 3 women in his small little tribe. And they're all foxy as hell. They're like Charlie's Angels of the Precambrian era. And it just shows them, surviving like cavemen do, hunting a woolly mammoth and some cool action. This guy's obviously really formidable. They do have some interesting touches, though. These little, women who look like they're just show dressing, just there to look pretty. That night they hunt for food, and she's the one who spears the boar, a wild boar. And he's kind of surprised. He's like, usually I, get the meal. I hunt the meal, but this is kind of weird too. They kill this mammoth, which cavemen would do for the meat. And then they just run off and then hunt something else instead of eating the mammoth. I don't get that. I'd even mention, this is written by Gabriel Levy, co-written, and by Gabriel Levy and Jack Sparling, the artist. Jack Sparling is an old-timer comic guy, and you can tell by his art, it's very, classic. I think this guy might have even drawn the Golden Age. At least by the 50s he was drawing. It's not bad. I mean, it's very, that kind of old-school style. Lots of action in here. He almost gets killed by this giant 30-foot snake. And then with no explanation, a Tyrannosaurus Rex shows up, which even little kids know that dinosaurs were not around at the time of man. Maybe this guy was a super hardcore Christian and he put it in on purpose. So the dinosaur tries to kill one of his ladies, and Cro-Mag rescues her. And everything's okay. Yeah, look at this. 3 hot naked ladies, and he's just lounging around. So one of these ladies and him have a son together, this little kid. And one day they're not paying attention. They're just kind of so languorous. They're just kind of chill. And this tiger, saber-toothed tiger, grabs the kid. And Cro-Mag rescues him. Kills the saber-tooth. So that's the end of the first chapter. Very simple stuff. I love caveman shit, though. I'll read anything about cavemen. It's not sexual or anything. It's just, I like it. So, Thrilling Adventure Stories was trying to be a slick magazine. They had all these articles. I don't care. Unfortunately, a lot of pages of these issues is devoted to some of these articles about shit I could give 2 shits about. Okay, here we get a nice comic. This is the first chapter of, they were going to do a series about Lawrence of Arabia. Jeff Rovin wrote it. He was the editor-in-chief, one of the editor-in-chiefs of Atlas, and art by Frank Thorne. The brilliant, great cartoonist Frank Thorne. most famous for in the 70s doing his run on Red Sonja. But this guy was drawing since the late 40s, very from the Joe Kubert school. In fact, he worked on many of Joe Kubert's war comics and other things for DC for years. But it's really, he wears it on a sleeve. Him and Kubert could be like brothers, art brothers. So this is the story of Lawrence of Arabia. And this reporter is trying to find out about Lawrence of Arabia. Is interviewing people. And this Prince, what's his name? Prince Faisal. You know, he's an Arabian. And he tells him about his first meeting with Lawrence and how impressive he was and how he saved them many times. He's a good friend of the Arabian people against the Turks during World War I. So then we come to the present, and, the Prince Faisal's talking to the reporter, and they're attacked by this biplane, a Turkish biplane. And it looks like Prince Faisal's had it. Looks like he's done for. But then Lawrence shows up. And I guess he downs the plane with a flare gun. A flare pistol, he says. And then the other plane is coming right at Lawrence. It looks like he's done for. He doesn't have I think he's out of ammo. So he takes a knife and throws it at he's really good. He's got great aim. And he literally aims it at the part of the plane that'll make it crash. A vital mechanism of the biplane. He knows exactly where it is and runs it through with a knife. 2-page ad for Atlas. The new House of Ideas. Another freaking article, this time about the Doc Savage movie, which was, I guess, current at the time. I gotta say, I've never seen this movie, but man, that's some good casting. That looks like a James Bama Doc Savage painting come to life. Now this is the shining star of this issue. I've never seen this before. Story and art by Russ Heath. I've never seen Russ Heath draw. I'm sorry, write. And this is a really good story. This could be a great 50s World War II movie. It's about this prisoner in a German prisoner of war camp during World War II. And there's this one guy who refuses to divulge any information other than his name, rank, and serial number. So he's in the box, the punishment box. No contact with anyone else. He refuses to eat his food. He's kind of on a hunger strike. But finally they let him out after 10 days. And here's the evil commandant of the camp. I love the way he draws him. He just looks like a fucking bastard Nazi guy. There's one guy in the camp, Banowitz, and they really seem to be hard on him. All the guards pick on him and beat him up. So he says, hey, Banowitz, I'm getting out of here. And I'm going to take you with me. Because you're a goner if you stay here any longer. They're going to kill you. So he comes up with this plan. He's on, what is it called? Burial duty, our protagonist. And he says, I'll assign you to my, work group. And what we do at this weird camp is we just put the corpses in the river and they float downstream to this area. That's how we dispose of the dead. And what we'll do is we will have little breathing tubes so we can be face down in the water looking like corpses, and we'll float right past the Nazi guards. They'll just think we're corpses. So what we find out, though, the next panel, Banowitz is a rat. He reports right to the Nazi commandant and tells him the plan. So he says, we don't want them to know that you're a snitch. So you're not going to say anything, but just make sure you're first going down the river. We'll let you pass, and then the second body will shoot, because it's going to be that guy, the protagonist. But our protagonist starts having some doubts. He asks him a question about America, and the guy doesn't seem to know. He's like, maybe this guy's a German spy, which he is. So he attacks Banowitz. And then we see later that night, their plan is in effect, or I should say his plan. And he's in front, so they let him pass, and they shoot all the corpses behind him. Look at this great, just typical great Russ Heath art. Those faces. I didn't even really talk about the art. I just love the wash tones in this. You know, it's just really nice Russ Heath doing everything, apparently. Just, yeah, beautiful wash, gray tones, really nice stuff. So then they pull the guy out of the water that they think is going to be our protagonist, and it's Banowitz, of course. And the commandant has this great look in his face of just like, gulp, do. He's like, the Americana knew. And then 20 miles away, near the safety of a friendly border, we can see our protagonist moving silently through the drifting morning mists. So that's a pretty good issue. You know, this isn't bad for 1974. But this next issue, man, they're firing on all cylinders on this one. This is like a 2 thumbs up your asshole, massaging your prostate. Good. So great logo again. We have a Neil Adams cover illustrating Cro-Mag the Killer. You're not going to believe who's in this issue. It's insane. And Atlas did pay better than most of the comic companies. This is a really weird thing. I just wanted to mention this 2-page, it's not even a story. The editor says, we're printing the following letter intact, exactly as it was written. It has nothing to do with our magazine. And it's apparently written by a New York City policeman who's just talking about this outrageous event where talking about a crime and some criminal who committed a crime and gets off pretty much scot-free because he pays bail. So it's almost like an op-ed piece where the last 2 paragraphs he's just saying, oh, things have got to change. These laws that mollycoddle the criminals, when is this going to end? Very strange that they put this in. It literally is an op-ed piece. It's not a fun story. It's not like, ooh, there's a thrilling adventure story. It's just, you know, this cop talking about this one case and then putting in his 2 cents about how the system is bad. Okay, here we go. What a way to start off an issue. The Temple of the Spider by Archie Goodwin and a young Walt Simonson. I think at this point, Walt Simonson had pretty much just done Manhunter, maybe a few things for DC, but this is primo Walt Simonson art. He's pulling out all the stops on this. I really kind of miss young Walt Simonson. I love his art now. He's a great cartoonist, Walt Simonson, but I kind of miss his more detail. You know, pretty soon after this, a few years later, he got very loose. Still great, amazing stuff. But man, this is some really nice art. I love how he draws this guy just like the guy from Seven Samurai, the oldest samurai who kind of leads them. It really looks like him. So basically there's a battlefield. The battle's almost over. Everyone's dead except for, you know, one samurai from one side and one samurai from the other. And this young samurai just says, listen, man. Wait, is it him? Yeah, he says, dude, we're both Ronin now. We don't have, our masters are dead. Everyone's dead except for us. There's no reason for us to fight. And they basically call a truce. And they see this weird old like hobo guy playing a musician. He's a wandering minstrel, I guess, just playing a drum. He just seems kind of like really messed up. I like this cartooning here, that goofy looking guy. And he was raiding the dead bodies, and they're going to kill him for it. But to save his life, he says, wait, there's this temple over there, and then supposedly there's amazing riches there, and I'll take you to it. And they agree. They spare his life and say, okay, but if there's no treasure there, you're dead. Man, this cartooning is great. Here you can really see the caricature of that guy from Seven Samurai. That's really good. We see it here too. It looks like he was looking at a photo of the guy. Just all these textures he does, the speckling. This is just Walt Simonson really earning his paycheck. So we come to this dilapidated temple. And there's a couple there, a priest. They're pilgrims. And they're visiting the temple. And they work here, they work in the shrine. They're rebuilding it. So it's this pilgrim and his wife. So they say, you're welcome to stay here and look for any treasure. We don't care about that kind of stuff. We're not, interested in worldly things. But apparently his wife is, because that night, the young samurai, he doesn't even, make a move at her. She comes to him and takes off her robe, and they make sweet love. So while this is happening, all of a sudden they hear this scream. And that beggar guy with the drum, Koji, is gone. And her husband also, she says. So the old guy and both of the samurai run to where the scream is, and they bring the woman along. And it's kind of like there's a cave, the mouth of a cave leading into the mountain behind the temple. And they find Koji and strung up in a spider's web here. A giant spider web, obviously. But he's got something in his hand. It looks like a giant pearl. A humongous pearl. So he's like, whoa, this is going to be a profitable day, And I love this art here. Koji basically is a husk. He just kind of turns into powder and dust. The spider basically sucked all the flesh and blood out of him. So they continue on, trying to find more treasure, and they find a bunch of those giant pearls. And, they're just, the young guy's just totally filled with greed and lust for this treasure. But the old samurai, he looks up and he sees a giant spider, humongous, attack of the young guy. So he leaps into the fray, chops off a bunch of its arms, and he says, okay, young guy, while it's crippled, take care of it. So while he's doing that, though, another spider comes out and attacks the old guy, which, he's not injured, so it's much harder. And while he's still preoccupied with his spider, the young samurai takes all the treasure and runs off, puts all these little pearls in a bag. But the old samurai is triumphant, so both the spiders are killed. And he goes outside, right where the temple is, and he just kind of sits and waits. Because he kind of has a hunch. And to prove his hunch, the one pearl that he had, he throws it in the air and cuts it open, and it's a spider egg. So even the little baby spiders are pretty fucking huge. And he kills it. And as he leaves, he can hear the screams of the young samurai in the distance, because he had a bunch of these eggs. So I guess the eggs hatched and made short work of him. I think this is lettered by Walt Simonson too. It has all that great lettering, that kind of weird, idiosyncratic lettering that Walt Simonson does, especially here. The credits here, that's very Walt Simonson-y. So here we have the second part of the Cro-Mag saga. And story by Gabriel Levy, solo this time, and art by Jack Sparling. So the women folk are fighting, and Cro-Mag has to break it up. And this is weird, because just last issue, which is basically like half an hour ago in Cro-Mag time, they weren't paying attention to this baby, and he got taken by Sabretooth. So they do it again. So the baby wanders off, and he's playing with these two wolf cubs. And he's innocently running back with the little cubs to the cave where the mother lives. The mother is not into humans as much as the puppies are. She's had bad run-ins with humans, so she is not happy. So he's about to attack the baby, Cro-Mag's son. But then this giant bear comes out. I don't know what the hell that face is supposed to be. Baby bears look like that in this age. I don't know if this is the Neolithic age or whatever. And they start fighting. The wolf gets tossed by the giant bear. So Cro-Mag attacks the bear. And the woman, one of his women, join in. She spears the bear. And then Cro-Mag grabs the spear that's kind of in his chest and just keeps wiggling it around. Bears are hard to kill. And he's just like, it takes forever. He's jabbing it and twisting it, trying to reach the heart. And finally he succeeds. And luckily their kid's okay. They think he's dead, but then the little boy walks out of the cave with the 2 wolf cubs. So then now they have 2 new members of their extended family. They've got these 2 cute wolf cubs. I'm sure the wolf cub's gonna grow up though and try to eat them. I don't think they had good dog training back then in the caveman times. Oh man, this is really good. This is a story by John Albano and drawn by Russ Heath. And Russ Heath is really pulling out the stops on this one. This is such beautiful Russ Heath art. It looks like he put a lot more work into this story than that World War II story we saw in the first issue. This one's called Tough Cop. It's about this old cop. He's retired because he was injured. And he's in a wheelchair. But he was like the toughest cop in the force. He's a legend. He's one of the best cops the city ever had. So his nephew is a young cop in the force. And he's always like, you know, Uncle Mike, you should move in with us. And, you know, it's just for the company. We want to be with you. And he's all like, I don't need no babysitters. I can take care of myself. So they're kind of bickering about the situation. And then, oh man, all this art is so perfect. It's so good. So the young cop gets called away for a robbery. And they go to this mink warehouse and these gangsters are stealing minks. That his partner gets blown away, and so Mike kills one of the gangsters, and then he gets in the car and chases after him. The main gangster guy like leans out his window and Tommy guns the car, and the car totally like catches air and goes into this storefront, exploding. So sometimes a little later, he's in the hospital, that young cop, Uncle Mike's nephew. And unfortunately, during their gunfight, one of his bullets went awry and hit a little kid in the arm. So he's suspended from the force until, you know, for a review to see if he acted good or well. So while he's in his hospital bed, this gangster guy calls up the young cop. And he says, hey, you know, I'm right outside your Uncle Mike's house now. You know, I kind of owe you one because you killed my brother the other day. And so even though he's not supposed to leave his bed, Big Mike's not picking up his phone. I don't know why he doesn't call the police and say, get out to my Big Mike's house. But he decides to run out, flag down the first cop car he sees, and he says, guys, we got to get to my uncle's house. Some shit's going down. So the gangster barges in with his flunkies, and they're threatening him. This guy's cool as a cucumber. He's a tough cop. And then the art even takes another leap. This page is amazing. Just look at the illustrative craft of this. This is amazing stuff. So it turns out Uncle Mike's got a gun hidden under his blanket, and he blows them all away. Well, he blows away first the gangster, the main gangster. Then he falls out of his chair, shoots one of the flunkies. Man, this is like one of the best comics pages of all time. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but it's really nice. And then as the cops show up, as the nephew and the two officers show up, he's shooting the last one right off the porch. This guy's like flipping over. And Uncle Mike jokes, says, you know, maybe I do need you and your wife's help. They shot a hole through my blanket. You think Marge might mend it for me, Jimmy? I mean, you wouldn't want to see a decrepit old cop get pneumonia, would you? And he's got this goofy look on his face. All around great story. I love that shit. Stupid article about Towering Inferno. Big movie at the time. It's written by Carl Macek, the guy who wrote a lot of books about animation. I remember as a kid, he wrote the Art of Heavy Metal, the movie book. I must have read that thing 20 times. Oh my God. So now we get John Severin. The story's by Steve Mitchell. I've never seen Steve Mitchell write. He's mostly an inker in all the comics I've seen. A great World War II story, Town Tamer. It's World War II again, and these guys are in Germany. They're cleaning up, and I think they're in Germany. Maybe they're in France. I don't know. But, you know, they're on patrol. They're taking a little break. This main protagonist here, Robert Carson, he carries around his grandfather's old, like, cowboy pistol. And I guess his grandfather was a sheriff back in the West. And so he was a town tamer. And that's, you know, the gun is a town tamer. He fought a lot of battles with him. So the sergeant comes in and he says, okay, guys, get on your feet. You guys are going to go to this next town and just look for booby traps and see if there's any strays behind. But it turns out there's a lot of Germans there. There's a lot of Nazis hanging out. They thought it was going to be mostly abandoned. So they're walking right into a trap. Man, look at this, just primo John Severin. Just so beautiful. And then the Germans attack. You know, sneak attack them all. Just beautiful battle action here. This is curious to me. I don't know if John Severin is a letterer, but this looks like Two-Fisted Tales lettering from an old DC comic. So I guess maybe John Severin would draw his own sound effects. Looks very EC, pow pow, the crack. Very Two-Fisted Tales, you know, Harvey Kurtzman. So they kill almost his whole platoon, or whatever you call it, his whole group. And they throw a hand grenade at him, but he's blown clear. And they're all dead, except for him. But he's a crafty, clever guy. So he shoots some of them. He grabs some guns. And they throw a grenade in the building that he runs into, but he escapes. Comes out the front second-story window and then goes around to the front door and shoots him in the back. The two Nazis who were looking for him after throwing the grenade. Just a really good action story. This is like a great little World War II movie, a mini movie. So he's leading them around. They can't find him. He's just really clever at eluding them. He not conks this guy in the head. He tricks him into coming to this place so he could grab his machine gun. Because he's like, you know, my grandfather's little pistol isn't going to do it. So he comes out of the store and just machine guns all of them. Almost all of them. Except for the leader. He says, hold it right there, German. And he's going to give him a chance. Just like in the Old West. He's like, when I drop the Schmeiser, go for your pistol. And the sergeant of this, the Nazis is like, you can't kill me, I'm a prisoner, the Geneva Convention. And he's like, fuck you, you killed all my guys, you murdering bastard, murdering son of a... And then one of the soldiers is not dead, he thought was, and shoots him. Or it doesn't kill him, but it distracts him, so he turns around, shoots the guy. And that gives the sergeant time to pick up a pistol, and they both shoot each other at the same time, and both of them die. There's a really, a lot of people die in the story. Almost all the protagonists. Really good war story. Okay, here we go. Hold on to your hats. We got Alex Toth. Trying this really... I think he maybe did some stories like this, but I haven't seen many stories in this style by Alex Toth. It's a science fiction story. I should mention the story is by Richard Myers. He worked at Alice too. So it's 1990 in New York, and this cop finds another bunch of kids who are dead from... They've overdosed on arsenic. Apparently in 1990, all these kids are going to be doing arsenic for a high. And of course, it's, you know, easy to fuck it up and die. So tons of kids are dying from this shit. But I guess life is so bleak in this 1990 future, a lot of kids don't care. They're like, yeah, if we die, we die. So he goes back to the police headquarters. And his sergeant's basically like, let it go. I think his name's Jeff, our hero. A lot of people are bald in this future. I don't know if that's the fashion then. And yeah, because, Jeff is basically saying, enough of this bullshit of just like finding these dead junkies. Let me do my job. Let me bust the damn pushers. We know who's supplying the arsenic. And a sergeant basically says something like, dude, let it go. There's a lot of people paying money. There's a lot of graft for these arsenic sales. Powerful people don't want it to stop. So he goes home to his wife, and it turns out his hippie son, his wife found arsenic pills in his room. And so I guess they're still hippies in 1990, in this mythical 1990, and the father slaps him. He's angry as hell. And he's so angry that he's just like, fuck this. I don't care what my sergeant says. I'm getting to the bottom of this. He goes through this stream of informers. We see a little montage. He's either paying them off or cajoling or coercing or beating the crap out of them. Look at these panels here. That does not, I would never guess that's Alex Toth. The shading and usually Alex Toth is very simple. He strips everything down. This is really ornate line work. I like it a lot. This is really good stuff. So this is one of his informants. When the guy says, how much you paying? Just punches him in the nose and says, is this enough? And this punches him in the gut. So the guy gives up he's about to give up some information, but then some sniper takes him out. Part of this, arsenic conspiracy. So he makes it to the headquarters where the arsenic pushers are. And I like that he tries to figure out weird fashions for 1990. Like, people are wearing weird shit. Totally out of Alex Toth's imagination. This guy's wearing some kind of like beret, but it looks like something a taxi cab driver would wear. It's got the little checkers on it. So he finds a bottle of these arsenic pills, and he throws them at the guys. And one of the flunkies knows Kung Fu and attacks him. He just punches him in the face. Maybe I should point that out better. Yeah, he's a black belt. And he just punches him. Wait, did I skip a page here? Sorry. I might have skipped a page. Nope. So back at the station, he goes back to the station. He's made his perp. And the sergeant's like, what are you trying to prove? I told you not to do this shit. And he's kind of pleased with himself. He's like, yeah, I got to push her off the street finally. But, the sergeant wasn't just blowing smoke up his ass, his skirt. When a car moves up to him and shoots him in the back drive-by. Because, like the sergeant said, there's really powerful interests want to keep this arsenic business going. And it's an ironic tribute to a man and a job well done. Really outstanding Alex Toth art. Never seen him draw like this. You can totally tell it's Alex Toth. But also, there's some panels where I'm like, I would never guess that was Alex Toth if I didn't know. Really good stuff. I like the story too. Except for the fact that people are taking arsenic in 1990 in the future. That's kind of silly. Okay, that's it. Thrilling Adventure Stories number 1 and 2. I wish there was 2 more issues of this or 50 more issues of this. But that's about it. I hope you liked it. I hope you can track these down. Definitely this one's worth having in your collection, number 2. At least, this one you can live without. But man, this is a stellar addition to anyone's comic collection. Okay, I guess that's it. I'll see you next time at the Petixonian Institute of Comic Book Studies. Have a good night.